What if I told you the real threat to your peace isn't the chaos around you, but the space you haven't mastered within? In a world where a single glance can ruin your mood, a late reply can trigger anxiety, and a sarcastic comment can hijack your entire day, you have to wonder, who's really in control? Is it you? Or is it every stranger who bumps into you, every boss who says, "We need to talk," every friend who takes too long to text back? We live in an age where emotions are on a hair trigger. One look, one tweet, one passive-aggressive remark, and boom, you're spiraling. And if your peace is that easy to steal, then let's be honest, you haven't built it strong enough. I'm not saying this to shame you. I'm saying it because I've lived it. Most of us have. We've let our moods become playgrounds for other people's behavior. We've handed over the keys to our emotional house to anyone passing by. But here's the truth. If someone can still make you angry, they still own a piece of you. If their silence shakes you, if their words can cut you down, then they're in control. Not you. But it doesn't have to be that way. The Stoics knew this long before we had smartphones, notifications, or 24-hour news cycles. They taught a different kind of strength, not the kind that shouts louder or wins every argument, but the kind that can remain centered in the storm. Silent, unshaken, free. Because that's what real freedom is. Not just the ability to go where you want or say what you please, but the power to choose how you respond, to live in a way where your inner peace is no longer up for auction. And let's be clear, this isn't about becoming cold or emotionless. The Stoics weren't robots. They felt pain. They lost friends. They faced injustice. But they refused to let their emotions control their destiny. They learned to carry pain without letting it poison them. They practiced seeing the world not as it should be, but as it is, and finding power within that reality. So if you're tired of being emotionally hijacked by things that don't deserve your energy, if you're done with overthinking, overreacting, and overstressing about things outside your control, then you're in the right place. This is not a motivational speech. It's a roadmap to resilience. Over the next chapters, I'll walk you through 13 Stoic lessons, not the kind you hang on your wall and forget, but the kind you practice every day. Lessons that are hard, uncomfortable, even painful at times. But each one is a tool, a weapon really, designed to help you reclaim your calm, sharpen your awareness, and become the kind of person who can't be shaken by noise, rejection, or chaos. You don't need to live at the mercy of every emotion. You don't need to fight every battle that calls your name. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone who misunderstands you. What you need, what we all need, is a mind that's clear, a heart that's steady, and a spirit that knows where it stands. So ask yourself right now, are you truly free in your own mind? Or have you been conditioned to react, to chase approval, to collapse under pressure that isn't even yours? Because once you start noticing how easily your peace can be taken, you'll also start noticing how powerful it is when you stop giving it away. Let this be your moment of shift. Not dramatic, not loud, but deep, quiet, powerful. The kind of shift that starts not by changing your life, but by changing how you live it. Now let's begin. Here are 13 Stoic principles that will help you rebuild your inner power, strengthen your emotional core, and most importantly, teach you how to protect your peace no matter what the world throws at you. Part 1, silence is the weapon of the resilient. There's a kind of power that doesn't need to shout. It doesn't slam doors or raise its voice. It simply stands still, calm and unshaken. And in that silence, it commands the room. Let me tell you a story. At a team meeting last fall, Hannah, a project coordinator at a marketing agency in Portland, was publicly criticized by her manager for missing a small deadline. The room froze. You could feel the tension in the air. Some coworkers looked down. A few glanced over to see how she'd respond. Everyone expected an emotional reaction, an excuse, a defense, maybe even tears. But Hannah just smiled gently, nodded and said, "I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. Thanks for pointing it out." That was it. And yet, something strange happened. The energy in the room shifted. Her manager paused, visibly uncomfortable. No one said a word, but everyone felt the quiet weight of her self-control. That moment wasn't weakness. It was dominance of herself. And in doing so, she made it clear she wasn't there to play emotional ping pong. She was there to lead herself, not be led by chaos. You see, silence, when chosen consciously, isn't surrender. It's strategy. In a world where everyone rushes to react, explain, justify, or clap back, silence stands out like a mountain in the storm. It's a form of emotional discipline, and few things are more powerful. But it's not easy, especially when you feel like you've been disrespected or wronged. Your ego wants to speak up. Your pride wants to strike back. We've all felt that heat rise in our chest, the words forming before we even realize what we're about to say. And yet, that's the exact moment where growth lives. When someone throws a verbal jab at you in public, do you fire back to prove you're strong, or do you take a breath, hold the lead in, and let their words fall flat? Because when you respond with calm, it unsettles people. Not because you're being passive, but because you're showing you don't need to match their energy to validate your own. The Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everyone acts according to what they know and who they are. Don't get angry, have compassion." That wasn't a quote for decoration, it was a way of life. Imagine being the ruler of Rome, constantly attacked by critics, betrayed by allies, tested by war. And yet, instead of exploding, Marcus chose empathy. He knew that people act from their level of awareness, and it wasn't his job to meet them in their ignorance. So ask yourself, how often do you waste your peace trying to win arguments that don't need to be won? Maybe it's that passive-aggressive coworker who never gives you credit. Maybe it's a family member who always knows how to press your buttons. Or a stranger online who leaves a rude comment just to see if you'll take the bait. The truth is, not every attack deserves a counterattack. Not every insult needs a reply. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. That's not weakness. That's emotional strength. That's choosing your battles, not because you're afraid, but because you're free. And this doesn't mean you let people walk over you. It means you choose when and how you engage. You hold your ground, but you don't give them your energy. You don't let their chaos become your state of being. Because here's the thing, when you react exactly the way they expected, when you blow up, lash out, or snap back, you give them what they wanted: control, attention, power. But when you respond with calm clarity, you take all of that back. Try this the next time you're triggered. Before saying a word, count 5 slow breaths. Let the tension rise, then fall. Feel your jaw unclench, your hands relax. Then ask yourself, is what I'm about to say coming from strength or from the need to be right? If it's the latter, stay silent. That silence will say more about your character than any clever comeback ever could. Because in the end, the people we remember, the people we respect the most, are not the loudest. They're the ones who speak least, but mean most. So the next time the room goes quiet and all eyes are on you, remember Hannah, remember Marcus, and remember that your silence is not emptiness. It's presence. It's power. It's proof that you're not here to be shaken by noise, but to shape your life by choice. Part 2. Not everything is about you. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like everyone was watching you even though they probably weren't? Jason did. He had just stepped into the gym after months of avoiding it. He'd finally worked up the courage to return, battling old insecurities about how he looked or whether he belonged. As he walked toward the squat rack, he noticed 2 people in the corner talking and laughing. Then one of them glanced in his direction. Instantly, his heart dropped. His brain said, "They're laughing at me." And just like that, the workout was ruined before it even started. But here's what actually happened. Those 2 weren't laughing at Jason. They were talking about a viral video of a cat dancing salsa in a sombrero. He just happened to walk by at the wrong time, and his mind did the rest. Sound familiar? This is one of the most common traps we fall into. Believing that everything is about us, that every frown is a judgment, every silence is rejection, every sideways glance is mockery. Our brains love to fill in the blanks, and more often than not, we write ourselves into a story that doesn't even exist. But here's the truth. Most people aren't thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves, just like you. And while that might sting a little, because we all want to believe we matter, it's actually incredibly freeing. Because if they're not judging you, mocking you, or watching your every move, then maybe you can finally stop performing. Think about it. How much stress comes from assuming others are thinking something negative about you? How many times have you replayed a conversation in your head, wondering if you said the wrong thing? How often do you hesitate to try something new? Not because you don't want to, but because you're afraid of what they will think. But who exactly are they? And more importantly, why are they renting space in your head for free? Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, said it best. Remove the opinion and you remove the I am harmed. Remove the I am harmed and the harm itself disappears. In other words, it's not what happens, it's what you tell yourself about it. Let's break that down. If someone doesn't say hi to you in the hallway, you could assume they're upset with you. Or you could consider they might just be lost in thought. If someone cancels dinner plans, you could take it personally, or realize they might be exhausted or overwhelmed. The point is, we create most of our suffering by interpreting silence as disapproval or randomness as rejection. And look, I get it. I've done this too. I've walked into parties and convinced myself that every group whisper was about me. I've lost sleep over texts that weren't returned right away. I've created entire dramas in my head that never existed in real life. It's exhausting, and it's not living. It's reacting to ghosts. So how do we stop? Start by noticing the story you're telling yourself. Next time someone looks your way and laughs, pause before spiraling. Ask yourself, what else could be true? Maybe they're laughing at a meme. Maybe they just remembered something funny. Or maybe it was about you. But if it is, so what? You're not here to win everyone's approval. You're here to live with integrity. And if you need a quick reset, try this simple phrase. Not everything is about me. Say it softly in your mind. Breathe into it. Let it settle. Because when you truly believe that, your anxiety starts to lose its grip. Brené Brown, author and speaker, calls this the story I'm telling myself. It's a simple but powerful practice. Instead of assuming the worst, acknowledge that what you believe might just be a story. It's not fact. It's not reality. It's just fear in costume. So instead of spiraling, say, the story I'm telling myself is that they're judging me. And then ask, what if they're not? And even if someone is judging you, so what? Judgment says more about the person giving it than the one receiving it. If they don't know your journey, their opinion is just noise. Let them laugh, let them whisper, let them frown. Your job is not to decode everyone's reaction. Your job is to live in truth, not in fear. So next time you feel your insecurities rising because of something you saw or heard, pause, breathe, remember Jason, remember Marcus, and most of all, remember, the world is not your mirror. While people look too busy wrestling with their own chaos to be writing a story about you, you're free the moment you stop believing otherwise. Part 3. Embrace failure like a soldier of the mind. There's a kind of strength that doesn't show up in victories. It reveals itself in how you stand back up after defeat. Emily had been dreaming of this job for months. It was everything she wanted: purpose, challenge, a chance to grow. She prepped for the interview like a soldier going into battle, researched the company, rehearsed her answers, visualized success. But after a promising first round, then a second, she got the email. Thank you for your time, but we've decided to move forward with another candidate. And just like that, her chest sank. The voice in her head began its routine. You weren't good enough. You said the wrong thing. You failed. Now, let me pause here, because I've been there, and maybe you have too. That moment where everything feels like it's slipping through your fingers, where you start questioning not just your performance, but your worth. It's not just a job you lost. It's a version of the future you were already starting to believe in. But what Emily did next surprised even herself. Instead of curling up in self-doubt or venting to friends for sympathy, she sat down with a notebook and wrote, "What did I learn from this?" She didn't ask, "Why did this happen to me?" She asked, "What can this teach me?" And then she went a step further. She wrote an email to the hiring manager, not to argue, not to ask for another chance, but to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the clarity. And most of all, thank you for revealing a blind spot in how she communicates under pressure. That's not weakness. That's mastery. Because you see, the Stoics never said life would be fair. They never promised we'd win every battle. What they taught was far more powerful, that our true strength isn't in what happens to us, but in how we respond. Epictetus said it best. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That quote isn't just a poster you hang on a wall. It's a principle you practice when things fall apart, when the offer doesn't come, when the relationship ends, when the door closes in your face. What matters then isn't what the world just took from you. What matters is what you choose to build inside. Failure is never just failure, it's feedback. And if you're willing to face it, not avoid it, not sugarcoat it, not pretend it didn't sting, you'll start to see that every disappointment carries a blueprint for growth. But here's the thing most people miss. Growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. It happens in the discomfort, in the silence after the rejection, in the stillness where you could collapse or choose to stand. So ask yourself, when was the last time you failed at something that truly mattered? Did you run from it, or did you mine it for wisdom? Because there's gold in that rubble if you're willing to dig. Emily didn't get the job, But she got something better, insight. She realized she'd been trying too hard to sound perfect instead of being present. She'd rehearsed her value but didn't fully own it. That awareness, it reshaped how she showed up in every interview after that. And just 3 months later, she landed a role that not only matched her values, but gave her more room to grow than she ever expected. That's what happens when you stop letting failure define you and start letting it refine you. And look, I'm not saying it's easy. Nobody enjoys falling short, but you can either let failure become a wound you keep revisiting or a weight that strengthens you every time you lift it. So the next time life says no, try this. Don't collapse. Reflect. Write it down. Ask what part of you this moment is trying to teach, and then thank it, even if it hurts, especially if it hurts, because only someone who has faced failure with open eyes knows what it means to grow with intention. Your resilience is forged in rejection. Your wisdom is built from the bricks of things that didn't go your way. And your peace, it begins when you stop seeing failure as the end and start seeing it as an invitation to become more. So tell me, what has failure taught you lately? Because if you're willing to listen, it might be the very thing shaping you into someone the world can't shake. Part 4. Your brain can't tell the difference between real danger and imagined fear. Brandon opened his email and saw the subject line, "Let's talk this afternoon." It was from his boss. Just 4 words. No smiley face, no explanation, no context. And that was enough. His stomach twisted. His mind raced. What did I do wrong? Did I mess up that report? Is this about the client meeting? Within seconds, Brandon had already imagined himself being fired, packing up his desk, explaining it to his partner, and scrambling to pay next month's rent. He couldn't focus. He couldn't eat. His hands were sweating and his chest felt tight. Now here's what actually happened. The meeting that afternoon, it was about a new project. His boss just wanted his input on something exciting coming down the pipeline. That was it. No disaster, no drama, no career-ending fallout. But Brandon had already lived through the catastrophe because his brain couldn't tell the difference between real danger and imagined fear. Sound familiar? This is something most of us experience daily. A vague message, a delayed reply, a certain tone in someone's voice, and suddenly our nervous system kicks into overdrive. The palms sweat, the throat tightens, the heart races. But why? Because your brain, especially the part responsible for survival, is ancient. It was designed in a world full of predators, not push notifications. It evolved to detect threats quickly, so quickly, in fact, that it often reacts before we've had time to think. To your brain, your boss's email feels like a tiger rustling in the bushes. That silence after you send a risky text feels like being kicked out of the tribe. A look of disapproval from a stranger at the grocery store? That's interpreted as rejection, which your brain translates as danger. It doesn't know the difference between you messed up the spreadsheet and you're about to be eaten alive. But here's where Stoic wisdom becomes incredibly powerful. Epictetus said, "We are not affected by what happens, but by how we interpret it." And that line, written nearly 2,000 years ago, describes modern anxiety perfectly. You're not reacting to the email itself. You're reacting to the meaning you assign to it. You're not afraid of the words. You're afraid of the story you're telling yourself about what those words might mean. And here's the good news. You can change that story. You can reprogram your brain to stop treating every uncertainty like a threat. You can train your body to stay calm in the unknown. How? Start small. Start with awareness. Next time you feel that wave of anxiety coming on, the clenched jaw, the rapid breathing, pause. Don't react. Just notice. Say to yourself, this is not a real threat. It might feel silly, but those words are like a pattern interrupt. They remind your primitive brain that you're not in danger. You're just uncertain. If you need to, write it on a sticky note and put it on your laptop. This is not a tiger. This is an email. The second step is naming the emotion. Studies in neuroscience show that when you can name what you're feeling, you reduce its intensity. So instead of thinking everything's falling apart, say, I'm feeling anxious because I don't know what this meeting is about. That shift helps bring you out of survival mode and back into logic. Third, act the opposite of what your fear wants. If your impulse is to send a panicked follow-up, don't. Go for a short walk, get a glass of water. Breathe, let your body settle before your mouth speaks or your fingers type. You're not denying it you feel. You're choosing not to let that feeling dictate your behavior. And with practice, your mind starts to learn, not every unknown is a threat. Not every silence means rejection. Not every delay is danger. Think of your nervous system like a puppet that's been trained to bark at everything. It's not your enemy, it's just been conditioned. And now it's your job to retrain it, not with punishment, but with patience, with compassion, with clarity. Brandon didn't become immune to anxiety overnight, but that meeting and what came after became a turning point. He started journaling every time he panicked over something that didn't end up being a real problem. And over time, he built evidence. Not that bad things can't happen, but that his reaction was often way out of proportion to the event. That's how inner power is built, not through perfection, but through repetition. So next time your mind tells you the worst is coming, pause, question the story. Talk to your body. And remember, your strength isn't proven in how you avoid stress, but in how you face it without letting it define you. You're not your fear, you're the one observing it. And that means you have the power to choose again. Part 5, stand firm when the world tries to shake you. There's a moment in life, sometimes quiet, sometimes public, where someone tries to provoke you, to push you off balance, and you have a choice to react or to remain. Linda was just running an errand, a normal Wednesday afternoon. She was waiting in line at the bank, bills in hand, head full of a to-do list, when it happened. A man behind her, clearly agitated, leaned in and snapped, "Can you move any slower?" Now pause for a second. What would you do? For most people, the instinct is instant. Turn around, raise your voice, explain yourself, defend your space, maybe throw a sharp comment right back to restore your pride. That's what the ego wants. That's what most of us are conditioned to do. But Linda didn't react. She turned to him slowly, looked him in the eyes, and with a calm voice said, "Thanks for the reminder. I'll keep that in mind." That's it. No anger, no sarcasm, no emotional outburst, just centered stillness. The man blinked, didn't know what to say, because nothing disarms hostility like composure. And in that tiny moment, in that everyday forgettable setting, Linda showed what it really means to have inner strength. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, once wrote, "If something external disturbs you, it is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your judgment of it." And he was right. You see, what happened to Linda wasn't a threat. It wasn't a punch in the face. It was just sound, words, energy thrown her way. The real battle wasn't between her and the man in line. It was between her thoughts and her instincts. And she won because she had trained for it. Here's the truth. We all live in a world full of triggers: delayed flights, traffic jams, snarky coworkers, rude strangers. Someone always has something to say, some complaint to make, some jab to throw. You can't stop that. But what you can stop is letting it own you. Strength isn't about how loud you get when someone crosses the line. It's about whether you can hold the line without becoming what provoked you. We admire people who can stay calm in chaos because we know how hard that is. Because deep down, we know we overreact too often. We lose sleep over things that don't matter, fight battles that weren't even ours to begin with, and carry the weight of insults from people we'll never see again. Why? Because we confuse control with power. We think that shouting back gives us control, that being right gives us peace, but peace doesn't come from proving a point. Peace comes from not needing to. It's in that pause, the one before your mouth opens and your fists clench, that your real character is revealed. So how do we train for moments like Linda's? How do we build that stillness so we're not rattled every time someone bumps us emotionally? It starts in the morning. Like sharpening a sword before battle, before the world even has a chance to annoy you, prepare your mind. Remind yourself, today I will encounter impatience. I will meet ego. I will witness ignorance, but none of it will steal my calm. This is a practice Marcus Aurelius himself did daily, not because he was perfect, but because he was human and knew he needed the mental armor. And when the moment comes, because it always does, and someone tries to drag you into their storm, you'll be ready. Not with a comeback, not with superiority, but with presence, with clarity. You'll notice your heart race, your jaw tighten, the urge to say something sharp. But instead of jumping in, you'll breathe, you'll wait, you'll say less, but mean more. And sometimes all it takes is one sentence to set a boundary. We'll talk when it's calmer. I'm not okay with that tone. Let's reset this conversation. No raised voice, no theatrics, just strength rooted in self-respect. The world may keep shaking, but you'll be the still point in the turning storm. So the next time someone's words press on your nerves, the next time a stranger's tone feels like a slap, the next time your instinct screams to react, don't respond with dignity. Choose restraint. Choose stillness. Because your calm isn't just a personality trait, it's a skill, a muscle, a form of quiet power that grows every time you decide to own your reaction instead of handing it over to someone else. And in that space, in that control, you discover something profound. You don't need to win the moment. You just need to remain the mountain. Part 6, be patient with what you cannot control. There's a painful truth that many of us learn the hard way. You can't save someone who isn't ready. And the more you try to fix what isn't yours to fix, the more damage you can cause to them and to yourself. Josh was the kind of partner most people would dream of. Supportive, attentive, loyal. He showed up when things got hard. When his girlfriend went through a deep emotional slump, burned out from work, estranged from friends, emotionally closed off, he stepped in with full force. He sent uplifting messages every morning, planned weekend getaways, bought books on mental health, encouraged her to try therapy, but nothing seemed to work. In fact, the more he tried to lift her, the more she pulled away. She began to feel suffocated. He began to feel defeated. And their relationship, built on love, started to feel like a constant uphill battle that neither of them signed up for. One evening after yet another argument, Josh finally broke down. Not in anger, but in silence. He sat alone on the couch exhausted, and in that stillness, a question came to him. What if love isn't about changing someone? What if it's about holding space while they change themselves? That was the turning point. He stopped pushing. He stopped trying to script her healing. Instead, he chose to listen without advice, to sit without judgment, to love her not as a project, but as a person, flawed, fragile, and figuring it out at her own pace. And slowly something shifted. Not overnight, not magically, but gradually his girlfriend began opening up, not because he pushed her to, but because she felt safe enough to explore herself without the pressure to be better. There's a metaphor I've always loved. If you tear open the cocoon before the butterfly is ready, you don't free it, you kill it. Because it's the very struggle of pushing against the cocoon that strengthens its wings. Without that effort, it can't survive outside. People are the same. You can't force someone to grow. You can't make them heal faster. You can't speed up someone's awakening, no matter how clear it seems from your perspective. And if you try, your help becomes harm. That's why the Stoics, especially Marcus Aurelius, emphasized acceptance, not passive surrender, but intentional patience. He wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you and love the people whom fate brings you, but do so with all your heart." That last part is key, with all your heart. It doesn't mean you give up. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you show up without conditions, without needing someone to transform on your timeline. It means being present in their process, not controlling it. We often think of strength as action, doing, fixing, stepping in. But sometimes strength is restraint. Sometimes strength is saying, I trust you to face your own storm. I'll be here when the rain passes. Think about someone in your life right now who's struggling. Maybe it's your partner. Maybe it's a friend or sibling or parent. Ask yourself honestly, are you supporting them or trying to save them? One comes from love. The other comes from fear. And here's the hard truth. When we try to control someone's journey, it's often because we're uncomfortable with their chaos. We want them better, not just for their sake, but so we can feel more at ease, so we can stop worrying, so we don't have to sit in the discomfort of not knowing. But their life isn't your project. Their pain isn't your puzzle to solve. Your job is to become the kind of presence that gives others the room to breathe, to fall, to rise, to come back to themselves when they're ready, not when you need them to. Josh learned that. He learned that real love is spacious, that silence can be more healing than speeches, that trust, when practiced with patience, becomes an anchor for those who are adrift. And eventually his relationship deepened, not because he saved her, but because he stopped trying to. And she felt free to meet him where he was, not where he demanded she be. So if you're holding on to someone who's struggling, pause. Don't tighten your grip. Soften it. Love them enough to let them struggle. Respect them enough to believe they'll find their way. And love yourself enough to know your worth isn't measured by how many people you can rescue. The butterfly will emerge when it's ready. And until then, your presence is enough. Part 7. No one has the right to control your peace. It only takes a second for someone to try and ruin your day. But whether they succeed, that's entirely up to you. Jack was having a rough morning, work deadlines piling up. He hadn't slept much the night before. All he wanted was to grab a quick coffee and get to the office early. But when he got in line at his usual cafe, someone barged in front of him. No apology, just a hostile glare and the words, "What are you looking at?" Instantly, Jack felt the heat rise in his chest. His jaw clenched. A dozen clever comebacks raced through his mind, and for a moment his ego begged him to strike back, to defend his space, to prove he wasn't someone you could talk to like that. But just as he opened his mouth, a single thought interrupted everything. If I react, I'm giving him the power to control my peace. He paused, took a slow breath, then simply turned away, ordered his drink, and let the man stew in his own chaos. Jack didn't lose that moment. He owned it, because he chose not to hand over his emotional steering wheel. That's the thing most of us forget. Every time we react to someone's bad behavior, we give them a little piece of ourselves. Every angry retort, every passive-aggressive response, every silent grudge, they all hand over control of your inner world to someone who hasn't earned it and doesn't deserve it. Socrates captured this idea beautifully when he said, "If a donkey kicked me, would I sue it?" In other words, why let yourself be dragged down by someone acting from ignorance, ego, or pain? Now let's be clear. Staying calm doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're free. Free from the emotional strings that others try to pull. Free from the urge to mirror someone else's bitterness. Free from the exhausting cycle of reaction. Because most people aren't attacking you, they're just spilling whatever is overflowing in them. Think about it. That stranger who lashes out in public? Maybe they're drowning in their own stress. That coworker who talks down to you? Maybe they grew up needing to dominate to feel safe. The internet troll with cruel comments? Maybe that's the only way they know how to feel significant. You don't have to excuse it, but you don't have to absorb it either. In fact, protecting your peace is one of the most powerful things you can do. And it starts with one simple shift. Realizing that your emotional response is your responsibility. You can't control how others act, but you can absolutely control how you react. When someone's words sting, ask yourself, do I really want to give this moment that much power? When you feel the anger rising, pause and ask, am I responding from strength or from insecurity? When someone tries to push your buttons, remember, this is a test, not of them, but of me. You're not a puppet. You're not a victim of every rude driver, every rude customer, or every thoughtless comment. You're the gatekeeper of your peace, and you get to decide what's worth letting in. Of course, this isn't about silence at all costs. Sometimes boundaries must be spoken. But the key is to respond, not react. To speak from stillness, not from fire. Jack could have yelled, he could have made a scene, but instead he chose to stay in control. And what he discovered is something every Stoic understood. Dignity is quiet. Presence is still. And power often wears the face of calm. Every day, the world will give you 1,000 invitations to lose your temper. Decline them. Choose peace, not passivity. Restraint, not repression. Stillness, not silence. And the more you do that, the more you become unshakable. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. So next time someone cuts in front of you, insults you, or throws shade your way, don't just react out of habit. Take a breath, take a step back, and remember this, no one gets to rule your mind unless you give them permission. No one gets to rob your peace unless you leave the door open. And no one, not even the loudest, most arrogant voice in the room, can make you small unless you shrink to meet them. Stay tall, stay calm, stay you. That's where your real power lives. Lesson 8, good or bad. It all depends on how you see it. Have you ever had a day where everything seemed to go wrong, only to realize later that it was exactly what you needed? Natalie had one of those days. She was already running late. It was hot, her phone battery was dying, and just as she reached into her purse to pay for coffee, she realized her wallet was gone. Not misplaced. Gone. Cards, cash, ID, everything. Her heart dropped. Panic crept in, and like most of us would, she muttered to herself, "Great, this is the worst day ever." But with no way to call a ride, she took the bus home, a route she hadn't ridden in years. As she sat there frustrated and lost in thought, someone tapped her shoulder. It was Rachel, an old college friend she hadn't seen in over a decade. They started talking, and by the end of the ride, Rachel said, "Hey, my company's hiring right now. I think you'd be a great fit." A few weeks later, Natalie started a new job she would come to love. And that terrible day, it became the pivot point that changed her entire career path. That's the lesson here. Life rarely comes with labels. Things happen, and then we decide what they mean. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Loss is nothing but change, and change is nature's delight." It's a powerful reminder that what we call bad might just be different. What we fear as loss might be the beginning of something far better. But that shift in meaning doesn't come from the world. It comes from our mind. Think back on your own life. How many of your biggest blessings were born out of setbacks? How many closed doors eventually led to better ones opening? How many times has the worst thing that could happen turned out to be exactly what needed to happen? The Stoics didn't teach that everything is good. They taught that everything can be turned into something good if we choose to see it differently. Let's say you lose your job. On the surface, that's painful, but what if it forces you to finally pursue the dream you've been putting off for years? Or someone betrays you. It hurts, yes, but it also shows you who your real friends are and clears space for healthier relationships to grow. The pain is real. The discomfort is real. But the meaning you attach to it, that's where your power lies. This is not about toxic positivity. It's not about pretending everything is great when it isn't. It's about building the kind of mindset that doesn't get stuck in the dark, but looks for the door even when it's hard to see. When you say, "This is the worst," your brain closes. It shuts down curiosity, hope, and possibility. But when you ask, "What might this be teaching me?" your brain opens. You begin to grow. You begin to rise. Natalie could have spent that day spiraling in frustration. She could have stayed bitter, missed the bus, and missed the opportunity. But she stayed open, just enough to let the unexpected in. That's what Stoicism helps us do. It helps us widen the lens, to stop judging every moment as good or bad in isolation, and instead see it as part of a longer story still unfolding. So the next time something doesn't go your way, pause, breathe, and remind yourself, this might not be happening to me. It might be happening for me. Maybe it's here to stretch you. Maybe it's clearing space for something better. Maybe like Natalie, you're about to meet someone or become someone you couldn't have otherwise. You don't have to force yourself to feel good about what's hard, but you do have the freedom to choose what comes next. So ask yourself, what if that bad day isn't bad at all? What if it's the beginning of your best chapter yet? That's the mindset that turns chaos into clarity. That's the mindset that makes you unshakable. And that's the mindset the Stoics live by, not to escape hardship, but to transform it. Because in the end, life isn't just what happens. It's what you make of what happens. And that, my friend, is entirely up to you. Lesson 9, turn annoying people into mental trainers. We all have that one person, the interrupter, the know-it-all, the passive-aggressive coworker who always finds a way to push our buttons. For Chloe, that person sat right next to her in a university group project. Every time she tried to speak, he interrupted. Every time she offered an idea, he dismissed it. It was like he had made it his mission to challenge her patience. She felt it rising, the irritation, the desire to snap back, to prove herself. But then something shifted. Instead of reacting, she paused, took a breath, and a strange thought entered her mind. Thank you for helping me train my mind. That one realization changed everything. Epictetus, the great Stoic philosopher, said, difficulties are what show men who they are. And sometimes those difficulties come dressed as people. What if the person who annoys you the most is actually your best teacher? Not because they're right, but because they're giving you a rare opportunity, the chance to practice strength without force, grace without approval, and calm without comfort. That's the gem of the Stoic mind. And the weights we lift, they're not physical, they're emotional. Think about it. Patience isn't built in peace. It's forged in frustration. Forgiveness isn't developed when people are kind. It's tested when they're cruel. Emotional maturity doesn't come from a perfect world. It comes from learning how to remain steady in an imperfect one. Every person who irritates you is handing you a tool, a mirror, a resistance band for your inner discipline. And the more you resist the urge to lash out, to take it personally, to escalate, the stronger you become. Now let's be clear. This doesn't mean tolerating abuse. It doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. Boundaries are essential, but there's a difference between responding with power and reacting out of weakness. When Chloe chose not to argue, she wasn't being passive. She was being precise. She refused to let someone else dictate her inner state. That's not surrender. That's sovereignty. There is something deeply powerful about realizing you don't get to control how I feel, I do. We live in a reactive world. Social media teaches us that outrage is strength, that clapping back is confidence. But the truth is, anyone can get angry. Anyone can post a rant or win a shouting match. What's rare, what's stoic, is being unshakable when shaken. Imagine walking through life and seeing every difficult person not as a threat, but as a workout. The rude customer, a test of your patience. The micromanager boss, a challenge to your humility. The friend who flakes again, an invitation to let go of expectations and still love freely. When you reframe your triggers, you reclaim your peace. The next time someone annoys you, try this. Don't react right away. Observe the emotion. Feel it rise and then silently think, here's my training for today. It sounds simple, but it's radical. Because most people never pause long enough to realize they have a choice. Chloe didn't become weak by staying quiet. She became wise. She didn't let her ego run the show. She let her character take the lead. And you can do the same. The Stoics didn't seek a life without conflict. They sought a mind that didn't need to fight to feel powerful. That's your challenge, not to avoid difficult people, but to let them sharpen you, not to silence them, but to quiet the chaos they awaken within you. Because the truth is, every encounter, every frustration, every interruption is a gift. If you choose to see it that way. So the next time someone cuts you off, dismisses you, talks over you, or tests your limits, smile. Not because it didn't bother you, but because you saw through it. Because you know who's really in control. Because, like Epictetus said, difficulties are what show men who they are. And who you are is someone who's learning to lift every emotional weight life throws your way with calm, clarity, and quiet strength. Keep training. The world will keep supplying the reps. Lesson 10, your worth is not measured in likes. Chris had poured his heart into a post, a piece of writing he'd rewritten a dozen times, finally finding the courage to share it. It was honest. It was vulnerable. It meant something to him. And then, nothing. No likes, no shares, no comments. The silence stung. He stared at the screen, refreshing, wondering if the algorithm had hidden it, or worse, if people had seen it and just didn't care. That familiar wave crept in. Maybe what I have to say isn't worth anything. But then a second thought followed, a quieter one. Why did I write this in the first place? And the answer came clear and strong. Because it mattered to me. And that one realization changed everything. We live in a world where worth is constantly being weighed by numbers, followers, likes, hearts, shares. And when those numbers fall short, we start to believe we fall short too. But Epictetus reminded us, don't worry about what's beyond your control. How people respond or don't respond is not within your control, but your intention, your voice, your truth, that's yours to own. Chris did not write for applause. He wrote because it was real, because it helped him grow. And when he returned to that truth, the disappointment lost its grip. You see, there's a trap in measuring yourself by attention. Attention is fleeting. It comes and goes, often driven by noise, trends, or timing. But value, real value, that comes from alignment with what matters to you, not from how many people clap for it. It's easy to forget that in this digital world, easy to believe that our worth rises and falls with the numbers next to our names. But think about it. Some of the most meaningful things we've done, the kind words we spoke when no one was watching, the courage it took to start again after failure, the quiet decision to stay kind in a cruel moment, none of those went viral. And yet, they shaped us. They defined our character. Validation is comforting, but it's also addictive. And if we're not careful, we begin to crave the performance more than the purpose. Chris could have deleted the post, let the silence win, but he didn't. Instead, he reread it just for himself. And it still made him proud. That's what mattered. So ask yourself, would you still do the work if no one praised you for it? Would you still speak the truth if no one applauded? Would you still live with integrity if no one noticed? Because that's where real freedom lives. The Stoics believed that true confidence comes not from controlling the outside world, but from mastering how you relate to it. You don't need the world to cheer you on to know your voice matters. You need to believe in your voice, even when it echoes in silence. Remember, every masterpiece was once overlooked. Every great mind once went unheard. Every meaningful creation began with someone who chose to act, not for approval, but because it was right. You're not here to impress. You're here to express. And sometimes the most impactful thing you can do is share your truth, quietly, authentically, and walk away without needing a standing ovation. Because if you measure your worth by other people's reactions, you'll forever be at their mercy. But if you anchor your worth in your principles, in your effort, in your growth, then no silence, no lack of attention, no algorithm can ever take that from you. Chris didn't get the likes he hoped for, but he gained something better. clarity. He remembered why he started. He stood by his voice, and in that moment, he won. So the next time your work goes unseen, your words go unnoticed, or your effort is ignored, pause, ask yourself, was it honest? Was it meaningful to me? If the answer is yes, then you've already succeeded. Your value was never in the applause. It was in the courage to speak, even when no one clapped. Lesson 11. Master your anger before you speak. It started with a message in the family group chat. Ben opened his phone, expecting the usual. Weekend plans, a photo of someone's dinner, maybe a meme from his uncle. But this time it was different. One of his relatives had posted something sharp, passive-aggressive, and it was clearly aimed at him, criticizing a choice he'd made, questioning his values, all out in the open for everyone to see. His hands clenched, his heart raced. The heat of anger surged up like fire in his chest. His thumbs hovered over the keyboard, ready to type something cutting, something to shut them down, to defend himself in front of everyone. But then he stopped. He put the phone down. He took a breath, then another, then a third. And in those 3 breaths, something shifted. Not in the chat, but in him. Instead of lashing out, Ben replied hours later. Calm, grounded, clear. No insult, no defense, just honesty and grace. That's what power looks like. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." And nowhere does this truth test us more than when we're angry. Anger is fast. It wants to move now, to strike, to prove. But often what it delivers isn't clarity, it's damage. Words we wish we could take back. Reactions that escalate rather than resolve. We're taught that anger is a sign of strength, that if you don't clap back, you're weak, that silence is surrender. But the truth is anyone can react. It takes no discipline to yell, no wisdom to argue, no grace to insult, but to pause, to choose presence over pride. That takes strength most people never train for. Ben didn't suppress his anger. He acknowledged it. He felt it fully, but he didn't let it drive the car. He didn't let it choose the words. And because of that, he walked away with something rare: dignity. Every day, we're given chances to lose control. Someone cuts you off in traffic. A coworker takes credit for your work. A stranger online misjudges you. And in those moments, your reaction becomes your reputation. So ask yourself, what story do I want my anger to tell? Do I want to be remembered as reactive or as intentional? As someone who adds fuel or someone who knows how to cool the flames? We don't get to control how others treat us, but we get to control the energy we return. And sometimes that pause, that one breath, can mean the difference between regret and respect. In the ancient world, Stoic philosophers didn't aim to suppress emotion. They aimed to understand it, to use it wisely. Epictetus taught that our interpretations, our judgments, create most of our offering. Not the event itself, but how we choose to see and respond to it. Anger isn't bad, it's a signal, a messenger. But it's not meant to be your master. Ben's story is not just about restraint. It's about choosing peace over pride, maturity over ego. And that choice didn't just change the conversation, it changed him. Think of someone in your life who stays calm under pressure. You trust their presence, don't you? You feel safer around them. That kind of person isn't emotionless. They're anchored. You can be that person too. It starts with 3 breaths. It starts with asking, will this reaction bring me closer to peace or further from it? And if you can hold that space, even for a moment, you'll discover a power greater than rage, a power that heals instead of harms, a power that speaks not to dominate, but to understand. So the next time you feel your anger rising, pause before you reply, before you defend, before you explain. Take 3 breaths, then ask, who do I want to be in this moment? And when you answer from that place, not from your wound, not from your pride, but from your strength, you'll know that's not weakness. That's real power. Lesson 12, reprogram your emotional reactions. Sarah hesitated for a second before walking into the cafe. It wasn't the coffee she was unsure about. It was the barista behind the counter. Months ago, he'd been rude, cold, dismissive, like she wasn't even worth a hello. The memory stuck, not just the moment itself, but the way it made her feel, small, unwelcome, disrespected. And here she was again, standing at the threshold with that same tightness in her chest, her mind already bracing for another cold interaction. She thought about leaving, about turning back and avoiding the discomfort altogether. But something inside her shifted. Instead of retreating or pretending not to see him, she walked straight up to the counter. And before he could say a word, she smiled and said, "Good morning. How's your day going?" His eyes widened, clearly surprised. And then something unexpected happened. He smiled back. Just like that, the tension dissolved. Seneca once said, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." But sometimes the remedy isn't just about delaying. It's about rewriting the script entirely. We all have emotional reactions that feel automatic, triggers we didn't choose, people or places that pull us back into old versions of ourselves. Maybe it's the sibling who always knows how to push your buttons, or the coworker whose tone feels like a constant challenge, or a past partner whose name alone floods your system with heat. Over time, these moments create grooves in our minds, predictable paths we walk without thinking. Hurt leads to withdrawal, disrespect leads to defensiveness, anger leads to retaliation. But what if we could step off those tracks? What if, instead of reacting from the old script, we chose a new one? Sarah didn't ignore her discomfort. She felt it fully. But rather than let it drive her behavior, she paused, examined it, and made a choice to respond with intention rather than instinct. And that small choice changed everything. The Stoics understood that we're not prisoners to our emotions, we're students of them. We can observe our reactions, question their usefulness, and over time reshape how we respond. That's not denial, that's mastery. Think about it. How many times have you let a bad mood shape your day? How often have you rehearsed an argument in your head, preparing for battle that never came? How often have you replayed the same emotional pattern, expecting the world to change while you stay the same? The truth is, emotions aren't facts. They're signals, they're data, but they're not destiny. And every time you pause, even for a moment, you're interrupting the cycle. You're inserting a moment of freedom. A choice. Sarah's story isn't about being nice to someone who didn't deserve it. It's about reclaiming her own peace, about refusing to be stuck in a version of herself she no longer wanted to carry. That's the real power of emotional reprogramming. It's not about others. It's about you. You don't do it to fix the world. You do it to free yourself. You do it because living with chronic reactivity is exhausting. Because carrying old pain into new moments keeps you tied to the past. Because peace is too precious to be surrendered to people who don't even know they have power over you. So next time you feel yourself slipping into that familiar reaction, pause, take a breath, ask yourself, is this reaction helping me grow or just keeping me stuck? Then choose again, not out of weakness, but out of clarity, out of strength. Like Sarah, you may find that the very act of choosing something new, something common, or even neutral, is enough to change the energy of a situation entirely. And even if it doesn't, you've already won. Because you didn't hand over your peace, because you remembered, you are not your first reaction. You are what comes after. And that deliberate, grounded, free version of you is the one worth returning to again and again. Lesson 13. Let others walk their own path. Mike had always been the protector in the family. Ever since they were kids, he looked after his little sister Jenna, from helping her fix a scraped knee to walking her home after late-night shifts. Mike made it his silent duty to shield her from pain, even if that meant carrying her burdens with him. So when he saw Jenna burning out from her job, working long hours, crying quietly in the kitchen, snapping at people she loved, he couldn't stay silent. Quit it, he told her. It's not worth your health. But she brushed him off again and again. I'm fine, she'd say. I just need more time. Mike tried harder. He sent her job listings, texted reminders to eat, even showed up unannounced with takeout. But nothing changed. If anything, it pushed her further away. The more he tried to help, the more she resisted. Until one night, Jenna said sharply, "Can you stop trying to fix me?" That hit him harder than expected. So he did something different. He stepped back, and instead of advice or solutions, he simply said, "I trust you'll figure it out." Nothing more. And that, surprisingly, was when things began to shift. Jay Acunzo once said, "Respect opens space for someone to listen. Pressure creates resistance." And that's exactly what happened. By letting go, Mike gave Jenna something more powerful than direction. He gave her belief. Not belief in his own judgment, but belief in hers. We live in a world where helping often looks like controlling. We give advice not because we're asked, but because we think we know better. We try to guide, fix, steer, and shape those we care about. Not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear they'll suffer, fear they'll choose wrong, fear they'll drift away from the path we imagine for them. But here's the thing, your path isn't theirs. And what looks like a dead end to you may be a breakthrough for them. Think about your own life. How many of your greatest lessons came from mistakes no one could have stopped? How many moments of growth came not from someone telling you what to do, but from being left alone to wrestle with life? Sometimes the best support isn't a push or a pull, it's presence. It's holding space. It's saying, "I'm here if you need me," and meaning it, not with conditions, not with timelines, just trust. This doesn't mean abandoning people. It means respecting their autonomy. Recognizing that we all wake up in our own skin, with our own timing, struggles, and inner voice. And sometimes the only way a person truly learns is by walking into the fire themselves, because the flame teaches something comfort never can. When Mike let go, Jenna didn't quit her job the next day or the next week. But over time, she started to shift because she had space to reflect. She updated her resume. She asked for help, this time on her own terms. And one afternoon, she told Mike, "I think I'm ready for something new." That conversation would never have happened if he kept pushing, but it did happen because he stepped aside and let her arrive at her truth in her own time. Letting go doesn't mean not caring. It means loving someone enough to stop managing their story. It means choosing patience over pressure, silence over force, trust over control. And in doing so, you not only give others the dignity of their own journey, you free yourself from the exhausting task of carrying lives that aren't yours to carry. So the next time you're tempted to fix someone, pause. Ask yourself, am I truly helping, or am I just uncomfortable with their discomfort? Can I trust them to find their way, even if it's messy, slow, or not the way I would have chosen? Can I sit with uncertainty and still offer love? Because that's the test, not how well you solve someone else's problems, but how deeply you trust that they are capable of facing them. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is simply, I believe in you. And then you step back, let them walk, let them fall, let them rise on their own path, in their own time, toward their own strength. You can't stop the world from spinning. You can't prevent people from being rude, unfair, or careless. You can't control the economy, the traffic, the weather, or even the mood of the person standing next to you in line. But you can choose one thing, to not be shaken by any of it. That right there is your quiet superpower. We've been taught to believe that peace is something that comes from the outside, a calm relationship, a quiet home, a stable job. But true peace isn't found in still waters. It's found in the ability to stay grounded when the waves rise. It's the kind of calm that doesn't ask the world to change. It asks you to hold steady in the storm. You don't need to be admired to feel valuable. You don't need to win every argument to feel secure. You don't need applause to feel seen. That's the old script. The new one is simpler, more powerful. It says, you are the guardian of your own peace. Marcus Aurelius put it this way, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do. Only what you do, not what they say, not what they assume, not what they post, only what you do. That is where freedom lives. So ask yourself, when someone cuts you off in traffic, when a coworker talks down to you, when a family member stirs old wounds, are you handing over your peace, or are you choosing to protect it? Because every moment life is asking you the same question. Who do you want to be in the face of this? The world will always test you. People will misunderstand you. You'll be overlooked, underestimated, criticized. But none of that can touch your inner fortress unless you open the gate. And sometimes that gate swings open quietly. You lose your calm not with a shout, but with a small surrender, a need to be right, a craving for validation, a grudge you didn't mean to hold on to. But here's the liberating truth. You can close that gate again, right now, not with force, not with revenge, but with a choice to pause before you speak, to let go before you react, to step back and breathe before the chaos drags you into its dance. And if you practice this daily, if you train your mind the way others train their body, you become a force no one can move. Not because you dominate others, but because you've mastered yourself. That is the Stoic path. Not indifference, but discipline. Not coldness, but clarity. Not weakness, but quiet strength. We all have moments when we feel powerless, when emotions flare, when someone's words cut deep, when the noise outside feels louder than our voice inside. But in those moments, we must remember, peace isn't given, it's built, it's chosen. And it starts with a simple decision. I will not let this take my calm. So if you've come this far, if this message resonates with something deep inside you, I invite you to do something small but powerful. Leave a comment below that says, I choose calm above all. Not because it's easy, but because it's who you're becoming. Every time you choose not to argue, you grow stronger. Every time you let go of needing to be understood, you become wiser. And every time you return to your breath instead of your anger, you step deeper into your power. That is what true resilience looks like. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's not something people always notice. But it's there in the quiet decisions you make, to respond instead of react, to walk away instead of explode, to carry peace into rooms that have forgotten what it looks like. Because in the end, the strongest people aren't the ones who shout the loudest. They're the ones who remain calm when everyone else loses their heads. So choose peace, not once, but again and again. Not because the world deserves your silence, but because you deserve your clarity. Not because they're right, but because you value your sanity more than their approval. This is your strength, your freedom, your unshakable truth. Let the world spin, let them misunderstand, let it all swirl around you like a storm, and you just stand there, still, quiet, unmoved. Because peace isn't the absence of noise, it's the decision to remain whole within it.